We had a good meeting. We talked about the forecast assumptions of a bonding bill of $700 million in the first year and $1 billion in the second year. And there are some different ways we could do that. We could do a $1.35 billion bonding bill in the first year and zero in the second. And then there's some compromise proposals. So we started to talk about what that could look like. And that's about all we went through in this meeting.
Yeah. The good news from the meeting is there does appear to be a real desire to move on a bonding bill this year, which is the right place to begin. And I have a lot of confidence in the four chairs and their ability to begin to assemble, based on the abundance of needs across the state of Minnesota, a proposal that could find its way through the legislature this session.
The only other thing I would say before we take questions is, in other news, the budget bills are coming together. I think you heard Leader Damith talk about the fact that the vast majority of the committees do have budget bills that are agreed to, that are progressing to Ways and Means. We still have a couple people that are working to get those final compromises. And so we're pleased with the partnership between Democrats and Republicans in the House so far.
And in the Senate, of course, we're seeing those bills buttoned up. We've heard 3 of the proposals already are budget bills in the Finance Committee, and we'll be taking up the housing bill first on the Tuesday when we return. So we are on a path to get our work done and get a budget balanced for the people of Minnesota.
Do either of you have a percentage you want to throw out there on confidence that you guys can get a bonding bill done at some point this year?
Well, you know, the House DFL has always been ready to do a bonding bill. We've never been a barrier to bonding bill, so our caucus remains, as it always has, ready to do a bill. I can't speak for the other 4 caucuses.
Likewise, Senator Pappas was ready with the bill last session, and she's ready to do a bill this session. What I heard from everybody in that room is a desire to proceed, and hopefully that won't get wound up in the politics of this place, and that we keep our eyes and our focus on what the people of Minnesota need, and the assets, our drinking water, our transportation systems, etc.
Are you expecting any strings attached to passing a bonding bill?
You know, I learned from Speaker Emerita Hortman that it is the tradition and the practice to negotiate a bonding bill within itself and not tie other politics to it. When we tie other politics to a bonding bill, that is the way you see it end or die, and we need to do a bonding bill this year, so I hope not, and I wouldn't support that.
When it comes to the budget, I know we're talking 4 years out as opposed to 2 years, but education seems like the big difference in extending the House. How are you both rectifying that?
Well, we haven't gotten to that point yet. First, what will be important is to get an E-12 bill out of the House and an E-12 bill out of the Senate and send them to conference and see how the different bodies put their bills together. In the meantime, we will start, as soon as we get back from the break, meeting very frequently in this room to talk about the big picture targets. But it helps a lot when these bills get constructed and you see them side by side, and how are those choices made? How do we find the middle?
You would see, if you looked at those targets, that we approach the issue of balancing this budget in different ways, but I think it is clear that our commitment to education between our caucuses has been strong. It is why we've put more than $5 billion of new dollars into public education in just the last number of years, because we believe it's so important for our communities and for our kids.
Could both of you address the sort of difference in approach we saw to targets as it pertains to inflation, why you guys handle those numbers differently, and
well, I think that people think there's more there than there is. So we have some very brilliant nonpartisan staff who help us put the spreadsheets together. And what we tried to do in the House, with the advice of the budget experts, is to display the numbers in a way that would be most easy for people to compare to the February forecast. So the February forecast presumed that we would spend $1.145 billion on discretionary inflation. In the House, we chose not to spend that, so we chose to show that as a line item. But really, when you look at money that was spent in 23-24 and money that was spent that's proposed to be spent in 25-26, you can express it in all sorts of different ways. So to the extent anybody thought we were trying to display our numbers in a certain way to communicate a certain thing, we just weren't. That's how they were displayed.
Due to the power sharing agreement, has the House operated differently this time in terms of drawing up a budget, meeting in committee and stuff? Have there been hiccups, or is everyone getting along?
Well, certainly it is different under a power sharing agreement. For the most part, it is working really well. I think I was pleasantly surprised that we had budget targets on time. That could have certainly resulted in impasse. And then I also have been pleasantly surprised at the number of bills that are complete and are being voted out of committee going to Ways and Means. We still have a little bit of work to do in a few committees.
Is it part of the power sharing agreement to not include policy in budget bills?
That is not part of the power sharing agreement. That is a perspective that the House DFL caucus has as a practical reality of a tied House. In a tied House, there will be Republican priorities of things that they want to change in state law or things they want to do in state law. There will be House DFL priorities. That can't happen in a tie because those policy changes or proposals will not get 68 votes. So my recommendation to the House is to put together bills that can get 68 votes. And the best way to do that is to have budget deals and not budget and policy.
Senator Marty, of course, has been the champion of making sure we don't have policy in our budget bills. And because we got a late start this year, he has acquiesced slightly on that point. But his instruction to the caucus, to the chairs, and to the people putting our budget bills together is if you're including policy, it has to be related to the budget, and it cannot impair our ability to pass those budget bills with 34 DFL votes.
Senate Democrats have announced their bonding target of 1.35. Is the House able to give like an official first offer that you put on the table?
We haven't gotten that far. No, we just talked about the different ways that we could do the work today, and I'm sure that when we get back from break, there'll be a lot more conversations on that.
I agree.
In meetings between the leaders, have you all discussed any big policy areas of agreement, anywhere you're overlapping yet?
Well, we're Democrats, so we see the world the same way. We came into the House pretty much at the same time. So I think you'll see Senate DFL and House DFL committed to strong funding for public education, work on making healthcare more affordable and more accessible, and making sure that the jobs that we have in Minnesota have pay and benefits that can support a family, safe working environment, and secure retirement. Those are our values, and we're very aligned.
And I would just add to that where I think we're finding agreement as well is appreciating what is coming our way in terms of the chaos and uncertainty from Washington, D.C. We're already seeing those impacts here in the state of Minnesota, whether it is the tariffs, the uncertainty of the tariffs that have been coming from Washington, D.C., the proposed cuts to health care, the loss of jobs at the Department of Health. We understand that we have to balance the budget to the forecast, but we also have to start to anticipate what we may experience here in the state of Minnesota and what that means for the people of Minnesota and the things that they rely on, whether it is adequate access to food, a strong public school, health care you can count on, a safe place to live. Those things are all being debated right now by Washington, D.C., by that trifecta, by the Republicans, and we can't close our eyes to that and pretend that it is a distraction or something that may or may not happen, because they are already moving with a budget resolution that could result in real cuts here.
Federal decisions factored into your conversations about a state budget?
We have not had a ton of detailed conversation about the impact of the federal cuts. We have had some when it comes to the area of health and human services to talk about how much the state of Minnesota relies on Medicaid to provide health care to the people of Minnesota, really from the spectrum of children to seniors, how critical that funding is and how dire it would be for the people of Minnesota to see dramatic cuts there. But we haven't talked about how to manage around that because we simply can't predict what is going to come out of DC. And I don't think we will know until September or October.
These bonding discussions, has there been any discussion about IIJA funds that aren't here yet, that could be maybe in peril, and maybe what that means for local needs and projects, if any local governments are expressing their concern about that?
Well, we know already that there have been changes in what we expected when we think about the city of Duluth. The city of Duluth and the lift bridge, for instance, they are looking for ways to make sure they can do that necessary repair. they would look to the state, and this is one of the things that I find challenging for us. As every unit of government, school boards, city councils, counties, the state, are contemplating what is coming our way, or if they're seeing contracts clawed back or cut, we are looking to one another, and we are together going to have to figure out how we're going to proceed here in the state of Minnesota, knowing that we're all facing uncertainty and in some cases real cuts.
Have you begun discussing tax increases or other ways to get revenue in order to kind of deal with anticipated federal cuts?
You know, we are right now balancing the budget to the forecast, and in the Minnesota Senate, the DFLers have proposed some revenue, including a social media billionaire piece of revenue that they introduced yesterday, which will be included in the bill. I think we all understand what social media is doing to communications, to relationships. We understand that it is a challenge, and there are a few people who are making a boatload of money off of the data that we're providing. And so we have come up with a novel way to look at that and to say to those oligarchs, those billionaires, you got to chip in here because you're causing some harm.
Certainly, the governor and the Senate have brought revenue to the table in the House. The House DFL and the Senate DFL agreed to neither tax increases nor tax cuts.
We go back any of the bipartisan housing bills that we're seeing some zoning reform bills as well as HOA-related legislation. Is that something that leadership is behind?
You know, I've just spent some time with their chair, Senator Port, who's been doing a lot of work over the last year on policy around housing. And while I think a number of the zoning reforms that she and others have been working on are going to continue to progress slowly, they do have a couple of ideas that I think could bring some relief this year that will, I think, generate support, Democrats and Republicans.
Same, I've been in conversation with Representatives Howard, Kraft, and Kozlowski, and I know they continue to work to find some approaches that could get majority support.
Senator, just your thoughts. Are you pleased that Senator Champion asked for an advisory review of this pro bono work? Your thoughts on where it stands?
So I think that it was really wise of Senator Champion to ask for that advisory analysis from the Subcommittee on Ethics, and I don't really want to speak to the work of the Subcommittee on Ethics, but it is the case that, from my perspective, what we understand to be the rules around a conflict of interest, which are in our rules and in our statute, are often, there's some gray area between that and the way that people generally think about a conflict of interest. When I was first elected and came from the Nurses Association and had a continuing employment relationship, there were people that thought that by itself constituted a conflict of interest. That caused me a lot of consternation, and it wasn't anywhere near a conflict according to our rules and the law and the expectations for us, but it did make me step back from that position because I didn't want people to think that I had some sort of conflict. And I think because we're a part-time legislature and many people have jobs outside of here, we find ourselves in that box, which for me means I think it is time for us to take a look again at what we mean as a standard on the conflict of interest, so members doing good work for the people of Minnesota don't get caught in that gray area.
Should we do one more and then go to lunch?
Over the break, what are you hoping to hear from folks? What do you want to tell constituents?
I am really excited, and I'm going to spend a fair amount of time in different parts of the state over the break. We have a town hall in the district I represent on Saturday, but I'll be heading north after that. I was in Wilmer on last Saturday. There were 750 or so people that came to a town hall in Wilmer, Minnesota, all packed into the cafeteria at a small public school. And they were worried. And they were talking specifically about the things that they were seeing happening in the federal budget, like cuts to libraries and museums, and potential cuts to Medicaid. I spoke at length with a woman who has a fully disabled husband who's a Vietnam veteran. He is in a nursing home. His care is $16,000 a month. And she's worried the nursing home will close. She will lose her care. She can't take care of him. She has no idea what will happen under that situation. She was in tears at that town hall meeting. I want to hear from Minnesotans. I always do. It guides our work. It will guide our work for the last month of this session. But I think Minnesotans are ahead of some who serve in the legislature. And Minnesotans are concerned about what they're hearing coming from Washington and how it impacts their lives. That's what we're going to be talking about.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.